Someone You Should Know, a program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sax, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sax.
Well, welcome back to another edition of Someone You Should Know. I'm really glad to have you with us again. And I really do appreciate all the comments that I get in between shows of people that write to me, text me, email me, and say, that was a really great show and we enjoyed it. If you do enjoy the shows, whatever platform you're on, hit the little like button and just let us know that you're enjoying what we're doing. And also, when you're pressing buttons, I want you also press a button to see Irving Chung, who is a franchise specialist. Now, sometimes you say to yourself, I'd really like to invest in something else where I can make even more money, but I don't want to do an awful lot of work. So you can contact Irving Chung, free consultation, just to find out what the world of franchising is all about, large scale, small scale, whatever you want to do. And Irving is even a franchisee himself. Yes, he has a franchise for the Cycle Bar here in North Texas. Now, why do I mention cycling? Well, segue into my good friend and my guest today, Tarra Gundrum, who just the mere mention of the word cycling just, I think, gets her endorphins up. Because you are a nut on a bike.
Yeah, I absolutely love being on two wheels, Stuart. There's nothing like going, 10, 12 miles an hour, smelling the roses, having conversations. I just love it.
Not only 10, 12 miles an hour, but we ain't talking for just 10 miles either. I mean, you get on the bike and you're gone, girl. Sometimes you're gone for days.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently got into bicycle touring and I load everything that I need to survive on my bike and I'm off. So my tent, my sleeping bag, my stove, sometimes I take my dog. I pull a dog trailer and take my little Maggie with me. So yeah, I love it.
And right from the very get-go, folks, I want you to jot down or see tarragundrum.com. I want you to jot it down, and at your leisure, I want you to go to her website. It's an incredible website that has everything you want to know about this young lady, her past, her present, her future, everything she's doing, even a picture of her beagle in the back of her bicycle. But I mean, and the other thing I got to do right at the top of the show is to thank you for your service, because you are a Marine. And I highly respect that. And in a lot of the information that we've discussed and that I have read about you, a lot of who you are today is because of how what you experienced during the Marine Corps. And why don't we start at that point? What was it that said to you at some point in your life, I think I'm going to join the Marine Corps?
Well, first off, Stuart, thank you for acknowledging my service. And I also, too, would like to thank you for your service. Very much appreciate it. And I think it's a lot of that common background that makes us such a great fit to start conversation. But as we talk about what made me join the Marine Corps, a lot went into it. I went to a military school for high school, Cleveland NJROTC Academy, Naval Academy in St. Louis, Missouri. And it was through that process of having a naval science instructor who was Chief Warrant Officer from the Navy, retired, and also a Master Gunnery Sergeant, retired from the Marine Corps, that was teaching us all about naval tradition. So honestly, I chose the Marine Corps based on the uniform and how legit that Master Gunnery Sergeant looks. I mean, he was like something to be like a pedestal. And I was just like, man, I need to wear that uniform. I want to be a United States Marine.
America.
Yes. I'm like, that's me. That's right. That's what I'm doing.
So tell us a little bit about your time in the service on active duty.
Sure. So I actually was a motor transport operator. That was my primary MOS, 3531. And I drove 5 tons and Humvees. So we would transport troop personnel, we would transport supplies. We did a lot of training exercises as I was stationed over in Okinawa, Japan, headquarters battalion, 3rd Marine Division. We did a lot of training over there, got a lot of drive miles. I actually learned how to drive. My first stick shift was a 5-ton stick shift. So that was pretty interesting. But while
Nothing like jumping off the deep end.
exactly with a crazy instructor screaming in your ear. So I served 8 years total in the Marine Corps. About 5 of those years was in Okinawa, Japan, where, like I said, I had my primary MOS, and I did a lot of collateral duties while I was in the Corps. One was the Marine Corps came out with a new martial arts program, and that martial arts program kind of took the place of the old line training. That was the hand-to-hand combat, but now it's more integrated. So it was more focused on like continuum levels of forces. Like, what do you do to de-escalate a situation? If you can do it vocally, you try it that way first. If you can use your voice, your command voice to de-escalate. Next was kind of unarmed restraints, where you could physically manipulate someone without actually causing complete physical harm. And then you'd use various weapons of opportunities next, something to just kind of de-escalate the situation at bay. And then finally, deadly force, where I think if we think about when a while back, when maybe our ancestors went into the military, it was all about fight to kill. There was no, I'm going to talk to you first. It was like, you don't belong here. I'm taking you out. Right. So that's the new way of the Marine Corps right now, the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. And I was, the first female black belt instructor trainer to participate in that program in the Far East. And it was absolutely amazing.
So you ain't nobody to contend with, huh? Don't mess with this girl.
I'd say that, my skills as I progress in age are kind of diminishing slightly, but my daughter and I were just practicing unarmed restraints in the kitchen yesterday. So it runs pretty deep in our family.
Well, and you mentioned family. You are married. How long have you been married?
22 years. I married my husband, whom I met while in the Marine Corps. I met my husband, Jason, in Okinawa, Japan. And he's actually from Wisconsin. That's how we ended up back here.
And children?
2 children, 2 daughters. Yes, Jasmine and Destiny. They are my world. But yes, Jasmine is a certified nursing assistant studying to become a nurse, and Destiny is in high school still.
Very nice. Any thoughts about them going into the Marine Corps?
Not necessarily the Marine Corps. So Jasmine is actually married to an airman. So she is the spouse of an airman. So she's living that life. And Destiny is actually considering the Air Force or the Army National Guard as an option, depending on which way she's going with her education and how she wants to serve. But she's definitely a person of service.
I've often gotten into discussions with people about the value of serving in the military, and because you have 2 daughters that are involved in the military. What are your thoughts on people, serving in the military as part of their lifetime?
I actually am one of those people who feel that any type of service, for a service commitment for at least 2 years, should be kind of mandated in some sort of way. Not necessarily saying that it has to be the military itself, but I think some sort of public service that puts you above yourself, that allows you to serve the community, that gives so much back to you, to serve the country that you live in, help serve and protect it. And that could be in so many forms. I described to you earlier that my oldest daughter, is a CNA. I believe that is service work. That is
Absolutely.
the work that our country can't do without. So when you get into nurses and doctors and firefighters and policemen, sheriffs, all of those areas are areas of service. And some might some folks can't get into the military for various reasons. It could be medical,
Right.
it could be religion, but there are ways that they could serve their community. So I say, if you put the word service on it and you feel that you are giving more than yourself and you're helping someone above and beyond your own needs, then I think you're on the right track.
Yeah, I strongly echo your thoughts because I am a more organized person because of my military service. I think that I interact with people a little bit easier. I worked in a corporate world for a while, and I find that you can interact with other people based on your military service. There's a little bit better of a connection. Uh,
Absolutely.
and also in the world of friendships, I find that your military service, when when you've had battle buddies, uh, you form a new kind of a personality that carries you forward. And we're going to talk a little about it in our discussions today. But you work with other people in organizing these bike rides and everything, and you have to rely on each other for support and commitment. That kind of dips back into your military service.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're always going with the approach of never leave anyone behind, and that sometimes people say that in the civilian world, and they don't necessarily mean what you and I might mean. It's like, no, that person, if that person is injured or challenged, like, we're not going to leave them on the battlefield. We're going to do whatever it takes to carry them out. Even if we're carrying them out on our shoulders, them and all their gear, they're coming out. We're not leaving them behind. Yeah, that reigns true all throughout all of my cycle planning, my day-to-day life. I literally right now call my boss, my battle buddy. He is a Army veteran, and same thing. It's like, hey, I got you, battle. He says that to me all the time, but that's what it truly means, is we always have each other's back.
So you were raised in St. Louis, the St. Louis area, and all, and then where did you go from there? When you got out of the Marine Corps and all, what career path did you take?
So, born and raised in St. Louis, went straight into the Corps. I served over in Okinawa for 5 years. And right after Okinawa, I went to Paris Island, South Carolina, where I was a drill instructor. That is where I
Whoa.
that's where I
Whoa.
finalized my military service. And I got out after that. And that's when I came back to Wisconsin. Yeah, and then from there, I was kind of lost, right? I always thought that I wanted to go into the healthcare field and be a nurse, just because of, when I was younger in high school, one of my, I'd say, part-time jobs, or the way that our family would help out another family friend, is I would sit with a stroke patient, and I was effectively caring for her during the time when her husband couldn't be at home. And that kind of really put me in the mindset of, I want to, help people and serve people in this way. But the reality is, after joining or going to school for the role, I found myself so emotionally attached that it was not healthy. And I couldn't really separate myself from the residents that I was working with and my home life. It was like there was no barrier line. And so I actually chose to pursue something else. And I answered an ad that said, wanted, motivated, military minded, enthusiastic. I'm like, that's me, right? And I showed up for these open interviews, and it was for a car salesman. And I'm like, but I'm telling you, this general manager, he pumped me up. He was like, oh, someone like you can definitely sell cars, right? And he was right. Selling cars is not all about knowing about cars. It's about knowing and understanding people, communicating well, and listening to what they truly want, and then delivering to them what they want. They already know what they want. They just want you to put it in front of them for the right price. And I have to say, I did very well selling cars, and I really enjoyed it. But it was too much time away from family. You have to pretty much be there, what they call bell to bell,
Right.
in order to really be successful.
And evenings and weekends are prime time.
Exactly. And it was in that moment that I had to make the decision. It was like, hey, I am completely away from my family all the time so that I can be successful and bring home a respectable income. But this is the reason that I got out of the military. So I'm right back off track. I got out because I wanted to spend time. Now I put myself in this situation. So I started seeking other opportunities, and I did a couple of in-betweens here and there, and I landed a job as an executive assistant.
Very good. And is that what you're still doing now?
Yes, I've been doing executive assistant work now for about 18 years.
All right.
Staffing presidents and CEOs of organizations. So before this current job, it was all private sector, and now I staff the senior elected official in my hometown county executive.
Very interesting. And we should say that you are now in Wisconsin.
Yes.
You live in what area? I think you're north of Milwaukee, aren't you? Northwest of Milwaukee?
Yep, northwest of Milwaukee, just right outside of a town called West Bend, Wisconsin, is where I currently reside.
And that is beautiful country.
Yes.
For the hobby. I don't know if I could call it a hobby. I think for you it's more of a second lifestyle. You are an outdoors woman.
Yes.
In every, I think, every possible way. Again, her website, folks, you got to go to her website and see the things that she's involved in. But what got you interested in cycling in the beginning?
So I have to just take this back and share a story with you. It all has to do with a day that I was at the beach with my daughter, my youngest daughter. And swimming has never been in my background, but I was pretty much afraid of the water when I went into the military. And I had always kind of made a vow to myself that, hey, when I have children, I'm getting them into swim lessons right away. Like, they're not going to go through the torture that I went through, right? And so my youngest daughter, Destiny, she was swimming at Regner Beach, and she said, "Mommy, get in with me." And I remember yelling back to her, "I can't." And that's the first time that I ever really said, "I can't," but it was like unsatisfactory that I said it to my daughter in my mind. And so the very next day, I went to the YMCA and I signed up for swim lessons. I was like, I'm going to learn how to swim. I'm going to face this fear. And I'm going to, I did it in the Marine Corps from a survival standpoint, elementary backstroke techniques and things like that. But I couldn't, swim for fun or fitness. And so I signed up for the class the next day. And while I was in the pool practicing, there's this lady in the lane next to me going back and forth and back and forth. And then she'd look at her watch and she's like, "Oh, okay." And then she's gone. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm training for a triathlon." And she took off. And then she came back and I'm waiting. Like, I'm no longer swimming. I'm like watching this lady. And I'm like, "What's triathlon?" She's like, "Oh, it's where you swim, bike, and run." And then she's off again. And I'm having this very sporadic conversation with this swimmer. And it turns out that she told me about a intro to triathlon course that was just about to start at the YMCA that we were swimming at. And she thought that I'd be a great fit for it if I was at all interested in swimming. She's like, "If you can swim, the biking and running is easy. Like, you're on the ground." I was like, okay, that's a good approach. And I didn't know what triathlon was, but I signed up for a triathlon before I left that day. And
you signed up for a triathlon not even knowing what it was?
I signed up for that class, that class, because the triathlon class was going to teach me. And at the end of it—
Were you a runner at that point? Were you still doing some running and biking?
I ran from what I ran in the military, just kind of like fitness running and things like that, which I never professed to be like a pro runner. I'm like your 10-minute miler type gal. Right. And biking was something that I had not really picked up as an adult. I hadn't been on a bike, but I remember biking as a child around the neighborhood, and that's about it. But I was like, whatever, I can do it. I'm physically able. I'm going to sign up for this class.
I'm a Marine.
Exactly. So I signed up for the triathlon class, and that lady, her name is Amanda. She became my best friend. We are still great friends to this day, and that is honestly how I got into biking. Was tagged on to the discipline of triathlon.
And you've been doing that for quite a few years now too.
Yeah, so triathlon is something I did probably all in for about 3 years. Um, I started with the various, I started with the mini tri, and then I went to the sprint distance, then the Olympic distance, then the half iron distance. And then I was actually training for a full Ironman when I received, or when I had a knee injury. And I've been having challenges with my knees ever since the military. And I constantly continue to push myself because, I mean, what else do you do?
Right.
And but this was kind of like the breaking point where the doctor was like, you know, you don't have any cartilage, you don't have any, you're strict bone on bone. I was continuously having this locking issue, and he's like, it's probably about time to relax on the running and do something that will help build your lateral strength. Do more swimming, do more kind of lower impact sports. And so that's when I really held on to the cycling. I was like, cycling is something that I enjoy. Yes, I am no longer training for a triathlon, but I can still, maybe one day I can do an aqua bike or something like that, and that's how I really got into cycling. Once the triathlon speed requirement was out of the way, I really started taking my time. I started going on very long bike rides where without an end time at all. It was just kind of like, oh, I'm going to bike down to the lakefront 35 miles away. I'm going to eat lunch and then I'm going to bike home. And I was just doing a lot of self-reflecting during those rides. And it just really became, I guess, my therapy. And after a while, you just realize, well, I wonder if I could overnight here. What if I didn't have to rush back, So that's kind of how I got in that zone.
And I mean, I know firsthand what it's like. I was a runner for 20 years and I blew out a knee, and then I started biking, and I have had spinal issues over the years, and I started riding a recumbent bike. And once you start something like that and it feels good, you want to kind of make it a permanent part of your life cycle. Uh, and I have participated. The Multiple Sclerosis Society every year has these 150-mile. Usually they're 2 day, 75 stay overnight, bike back 75 miles the next day for the benefit of the Multiple Sclerosis Society. Uh, and I'll tell you, there is nothing like really being out on the open road, whether you're with other people all the time or just occasionally. Uh, but the one thing that I wanted to ask, when you are out cycling, and sometimes it is for an extended period of time, are you listening to music or are you listening to nature?
It really depends on the time of day for me. I actually have a routine. The first part of my cycling is all about reflection, and I actually pray on my bike. And so it's just like the way that I have good conversation with God and in nature. And after that, I usually listen to just kind of like usually some motivating, like worship music that's kind of upbeat. And I always only
Yeah.
have one earbud in, and I keep one ear free. Um,
Right. That's a
yep.
smart move.
Yeah. And then after that routine is over, or depending on, I don't know how many miles I'm going, I usually switch over to a really crazy playlist that involves a lot of Taylor Swift. So I like, I'm a, I'm a Swiftie. I love my Taylor Swift.
Well, we're talking about how you use your cycling a little bit as kind of therapy and motivation and all. That actually led to you writing a book about some of those experiences, about that feeling. Tell those that are watching and listening a little bit more about the book.
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying that I have a really good friend and mentor of mine that he would constantly tell me, Tara, I can't wait to read your book one day. And I would constantly tell him, what do you mean? Like, I do not have a story to tell. But after being on my bike and reflecting and thinking, I would start to think about all of the people who helped me achieve the life that I'm living today, because I fully recognize that I didn't get here on my own. There were several teachers that invested in me, coaches, family, friends, church members, mentors, Marine Corps battle buddies, like, and those are the people that helped me get to where I am. And so that's kind of what led to the idea of finding my possible, because I was constantly thinking, like, okay, I am who I am today. And basically, I found my possible by way of filling in the blanks of all of those things and experiences and the people that I just mentioned. And after I came back from one of my cycling trips, I had gone out to Pittsburgh and cycled from Pittsburgh to DC, and I did the Gap and the CNO Trail. And when I came out from that, or while I was out on that trip, it just kind of hit me. I was like, I'm doing this. And I kind of remember flashing up my camera, putting it in selfie mode and recording a video, just telling the world that, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to not only tell my story, but I want to tell the stories of other people and how, what's their possible. And so, like, as I was on that trip, I was like, hey, what are you doing? You're making it possible through this way and that way. And when I came back from the trip, I looked up how to write a book and I literally started writing.
I mean, is there anything that you can't do? Because you say, okay, so I Googled how to write a book, and I wrote a book. You thought about biking. Well, not just biking around the block or over to the forest preserve and back and all, but actually touring, cycling. With like you said earlier, you got the stove, you got the backpack, you got the tent, anything that you need, you can put on, and that's on the website too, folks. That's why I keep saying you got to check out TarraGundrum.com. It's there. I mean, some of the little videos that you have, it's awe-inspiring. And you came from a kind of a different background. Raised as a young black girl and all in St. Louis, and then going into the Marine Corps. You have had interracial relationships and all. How does that affect Tara, herself? And then you've taken that again, something else you do. You share that with other women. You're an incredible young lady.
Thank you, Stuart. I really appreciate those kind words. Like I said, I really think that growing up, my mom, she always instilled in me that I don't know if she told all of her kids this, but I took it to heart. She's like, Tara, you are special and you are different. And there's going to be some things that you're interested in and that you're going to want to do. And not everyone's going to agree with them. But if you feel it in your heart that it's something that you want to pursue and that you can achieve, you'll figure out a way and go for it. And she's like, I'm behind you all the way. And she's been that way with me my entire life. And I approach life that way. I'm never really completely afraid of trying something, but I do want to be successful. So I put a lot of time and effort and thought into attempting something, but I never sit by the wayside. If I think it, I kind of dream it and I believe that I can achieve it. And so that's pretty much what happens with me. I go for it. It sometimes drives my husband nuts, but yeah, he backs me 100% on it.
Now, is he also a biker and a runner and a triathlete type too?
So it's funny. We are always in different seasons when it comes to this type of stuff. So my husband was a great runner. He ran marathons and really enjoyed it. And he also got into cycling, but he was more so in it for, what average people are in it for, just kind of tooling around the neighborhood and getting a little work and, getting a little workout and a little
Right.
fresh air. But actually after, the pandemic hit, I decided to go on my very first tour alone. I did that and I came back and I just would not shut up about it. And the very next thing that happened to us when I came back from my tour is all of our trips, of course, were canceled. And our anniversary trip was canceled. Our summer trip was canceled. And I just said to my husband, I said, hey, want to go on a bike tour for a trip, for a vacation? And he was all in. And we had planned this amazing bicycle trip that we were going to bicycle across Wisconsin and go up to the Apostle Islands and stay there and then catch a ride back from his father. But that was canceled. And we ended up doing a trip around Wisconsin to Michigan. We actually cycled from Two Rivers down the coast south to Milwaukee. We took the ferry over across to where did that ferry land? Muskegon or something like that.
Okay.
And then north up to Ludington. And then we took the SS Badger back across to Two Rivers. So we did a lovely kind of like 5-day tour and it was phenomenal. And he still rides his bike and hikes all over the place.
All right. So you're not satisfied enough with that. You decide you're going to start an organization. I mean, are you counting, folks? Because I've almost run out of fingers. But she decides she's going to start an organization. And what is BGDB all about?
Oh, so Black Girls Do Bike is an organization.
Love the name.
It's amazing. So this is actually not something that I'm starting directly. This is an organization that is already up and running. A cyclist, mother, beautiful, strong Black woman. Her name is Monica Godfrey Garrison. She is the founder of Black Girls Do Bike. And actually, I was doing a century ride one day in Newburgh.
Which is 100 miles, folks.
It was my first century ride ever. And it took place out of Newburgh, Wisconsin. And so I was like literally the only Black person in that race. I'm pretty positive, for sure, the only Black female. And you just don't see a lot of people who look like me in my area at that time. And I remember leaving super early in the morning. They kind of released you on the ride based on your distance. So of course, if you were going 100 miles, you started early, and then
Right.
the next group to go was about the 80 milers and then the 50 milers and so on and so forth. And then somewhere around noon or maybe 2:00, I'm not sure, the fun ride or the 30-mile ride started or something like that. And so there's a whole group of people that were out on the course that started that I didn't even see at first. But I remember turning into the finish chute after my 100 miles and just hearing the loudest, craziest screaming I've ever heard in my life. And it wasn't long before I recognized that those women that were screaming, they were screaming for me. And then I got closer and I'm like, that's a lot of Black people in Newburgh, right? And I was like, and they're pretty loud and they're pretty like screaming crazy, like they are rooting me on. And it turns out that was the organization Black Girls Do Bike. They had brought a very large group of women from the Milwaukee chapter up to the Newburgh area to participate in the events that day. And they had just completed one of their events and they waited because they heard that I was on the course doing 100 miles and they just wanted to cheer me on. So just by sharing that alone is incredible. I mean, I'm a complete stranger. They have no idea who I am, but they wanted to support me and let me know that they were there supporting me. And so after that experience, I became very interested in understanding more about the organization. And I am trying to start a chapter here in West Bend. There's not a lot of people that look like me in West Bend, Black girls that are cycling, but I will tell you that the population is definitely growing, and it's not 100% like you don't have to be Black to be a part of Black Girls Do Bike. Like, we are a very diverse club.
Right.
Basically, we are there to support women in general of all shades, is what I like to say. And every now and then we'll even have rides that are like open to everyone, the males as well. But for the most part, we're there to support women. We're there to be there for each other, give them and provide a safe space for them to enjoy this beautiful sport. And also, there's a lot of support that goes back and forth between the groups. So I really love what the mission of Black Girls Do Bike is. I love what Monica has done with the organization. And there's a bunch of folks like me throughout the world. They're called She-Ros. And basically, we're just the extension of the leadership in our own very specific chapter. And we're the ones responsible for just kind of making sure that the mission of the organization is carried out and that we're doing the best to uphold that beautiful name that was established.
Well, and sharing that passion with other women too gets more of them involved in the sport, and whether you're male or female, it's always a good idea to be riding in a group rather than solo. So you're sharing that camaraderie. You're also just sharing that effort that you're putting out, and you're supporting each other. And certainly, if there's ever a breakdown or something, you're there to help support each other also. And that's a great idea. And wait, we're not, this is like that commercial that says, but wait, there's more. Because you've taken all of these experiences. Now we've got the Marines, we've got cycling, we've got swimming, we've got running, we've got all this athletic ability. And you say to yourself, you know what? I think I want to talk about this with other people. So, I think I'm going to start a podcast. And that's where we really started our conversation. Was you reached out to me to say, hey, just give me a couple of little tips what I should do, and podcasting is so great, and because of your background, man, you'll have people lining up to be guests on your show. Which again, folks, go to the website. You can go to tarragundrum.com, and there is a little button on there that talks about the podcast. And you can fill out a little form, which I did, to say, hey, listen, I would like to follow your podcast and maybe even be a guest.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Stuart.
That launches this coming month, doesn't it?
Yes.
You launch it in March.
Yep, it actually launches on March 23rd. I will be airing my very first episode. Super excited. Yeah, basically the Possible Project podcast is all about sharing the stories of all of the incredible people that I meet. I've met so many people on my bicycle tours. I meet people in the various disciplines of activities, whether it be hiking, triathlon, work, Marine Corps. There's so many people. And all we know about those individuals is what we see today. We see what's in front of us right now, but we don't understand the journey. We don't understand how they got there. And most importantly, some of the resources that they use to help them be successful. And when those stories are shared, they can be very inspirational. They can share tidbits and share resources that others might not even know is available to them. There's this one story that really leaned heavily into me starting this podcast. And I wrote about it in the book. And I was really not sure if I should write about it or not. And it was all about breastfeeding. That book was my heart and soul. I put everything out there really, truly as I felt it and as I experienced it. And I didn't leave anything out, even though those details were very, personal.
Right.
But so many women came to me after that and they were like, wow, you went through that too. Like, I thought I was alone. Like, I thought I was a failure. I hear that a lot. And I'm like, no, you're not a failure. You're just living. You're living, and you had a challenge that you needed to overcome. And look at your child. They're beautiful. They're fine. You are not a failure. Like, and so that's just a very small insight to kind of why I started it. But there are so many stories out there that people could resonate with. And I'm just excited to be able to have a platform to do it. And it's, I guess, one of my service projects. It's like my way of loving and serving my neighbor. It's what we're all supposed to do.
Exactly. And again, I think part of that goes back to our military service. Is it was instilled in us to be there for our neighbor, and so we do it. Now, folks, again, I want you to take a good long look at this beautiful Black woman, because not only is she a biker and a swimmer and a runner and a hiker, but she enjoys fishing, ice skating, hockey, and you and I share a sport, archery.
Yes.
You enjoy archery, and it was the only sport I in my life have ever excelled in.
Outstanding. Well, one day I would love to get on an archery range with you, or I don't know if if you get to do it from a hunting perspective or just from a sport perspective, but either way, I'm into them both. I love my bow.
It's a great concentration sport.
It is so therapeutic.
Yeah. All right. So I want you to share with my audience, which is a nationwide audience, and there are folks in big towns and big cities and little small communities. If you want to get motivated into doing something that helps your mind and your body and everything, what are some of the things that you would suggest that young girls in particular get out there to do to get themselves into that same mindset that you enjoy?
I think first, find something that you can actually maybe really have some alone time with. Whatever that means to you, that you can do it safely. Some people choose the art of yoga. For me, that was definitely cycling and hiking. I would just be alone with my thoughts. I mean, no earbuds, no excess noise. And I just kind of allow my mind to wander. And it was during that process that I was able to kind of start to focus on myself from the inside out. And I mean, from there, the sky is the limit. I think that if you have faith, pray about everything. And that alone is a process of inner healing. And that will actually give you the faith and the courage to step out and do some of those things that you necessarily didn't know were possible. And it'll help you find your own possible. So that's my advice.
See, finding your possible. That's what it's all about. Man, this has been a lot of fun. Just spending time with you and talking again. You are an inspiration, and I think you're absolutely right. You just need to say, I'd like to try this. And don't just think about it. Go out and try it. If it's successful, then grow and go with it. If it doesn't, find the next thing. You in the information that I've read about you, you were quoted as being an adventure ambassador. And I think that it truly kind of sums you up in one little package. I don't think that there is an adventure that you're not afraid of, at least once, to try once.
Yep, you have to try it. My great mentor and my great coach, Ron Newell, you'll hear about him all throughout my book. He shared with me something that I still live by today, and that is you will miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And with that being said, it's just like, oh, of course I'm not going to be successful if I'm not doing it. So I'm going to get out there and do it. Even if there's a chance of failure, you got to try.
That's right. That's right. You can't win if you don't try.
Right.
Just like you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket.
Exactly. Exactly.
Tarra, the very, very best. I am so excited. I can't wait to start following your podcast. And all folks, please check out the website, learn a little bit more about this young lady and the things that she's doing, because I think you're going to get hooked just like I have. And maybe she'll give me a call one day and say, hey, how'd you like to be on my podcast?
Oh my gosh, Stuart, I'm working you and you don't even know it. I gotta share that I already sent Stuart the form to fill out to be on the show. Yep. And literally I'm waiting for you for a special slot though.
Okay.
I'm thinking of you for like my 20th episode.
Very good. Well, thanks again for taking the time. It's just been really enjoyable and sharing you with my audience, because you're a treasure and you're a good friend now. And I always end my shows by saying, be yourself, because everyone else is taken. And I'm sure that you can relate to that phrase. And so, Tarra Gundrum, thank you again for being someone we should know.
Thank you.
Take care. We'll see you again next week, folks.
Someone you should know.